What's up, guys? Just want to make this quick pre video pre advertisement show. Like always, Smart Up is our sponsor today, and you can see their ad here. Thank you, Smart Up, for sponsoring this video. Much appreciated to you guys. As always, links in the description box down below. Please check them out. They do support the show, but don't worry, no added cost to you guys. They are a soap company. Shocker. And they basically help guys like me who are both martial artists and lifters to basically keep clean. Obviously, if you're a martial artist, you don't know who has what. You're sweating everywhere. Same thing with lifting too. You don't know who, like, which sweaty person touched what, and yeah, it keeps you safe. It keeps you clean and it keeps you safe from ringworm and like other stuff that could actually be, number one, contagious. Number two, be very harmful for you and other people. So just stay safe. And like I said, it's a great soap company. I actually personally use this, so I can actually tell from experience that, hey, this is something that you should definitely check out. But as always, thank you for listening, and here is your podcast. Thank you. Welcome to, hey guys, this is your boy again. Come back to another video on this channel. Today we got Professor Rajiv Kapur. He's a adjunct professor at Syracuse, at Levi School of Business here at Santa Clara University, and he's actually one of my professors. So I'm very excited about this. Professor Kapur, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess the first question we'll start off with is, how did you get into business?
When you say business, do you mean the school of business, or do you mean the actually starting my business?
I guess we'll go with both.
Okay. Well, so I am an engineer by training.
Woohoo, fellow engineer.
So I have an undergraduate in mathematics and science and another undergraduate in chemical engineering.
Nice.
And then that's from IIT Roorkee. And then I came to the States and I went to University of Texas at Arlington. Mm-hmm. And I did my master's and my doctorate in industrial and systems engineering with a minor in economics. Nice. And also information systems. So that's really what my academic background was. How I segued into business? Well, I have never really taught, meaning I have never been a full-time professor. Mm-hmm. So when I did my doctorate, as most PhDs who are in engineering will get offers, job offers, and right. So did I. And I decided I did not want to be a professor, a full-time prof at the time. So I went off on my own and I started to work regular jobs, moved up, moved up organizations, then started my own business. Many years into my career, I started my own business. And then I started to teach in the School of Business also. So that's my segue.
Cool. It's an interesting pathway you took from engineering to not becoming wanting to become a professor to actually becoming a professor.
Yeah, as an engineer, what happened was that I started as a programmer.
Right.
And then from there, I moved into slowly moving up the ranks into Chief Information Officer, so CIO, and I stayed in one vertical. The vertical that I stayed in was healthcare. So okay. I have been in healthcare for the last 35 so years.
Oh, that's longer than some of us have been alive.
I know. So 35 years plus, 35 years plus. So it's actually more than 35. And and I've been in, so I think I understand healthcare systems well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I've been working on. And like I said, I became a senior vice president, CIO, stuff like that for large healthcare organizations. And then many years ago, I left to form my own business.
Okay.
And it's that healthcare business then that took off. And then I couldn't really teach as much. I've always taught as an adjunct at Virginia Tech, used to be in the East Coast.
Yeah.
So I used to teach at Virginia Tech, at Georgetown University,
Georgetown.
George Washington University, University of Maryland.
Nice.
And then when we moved to the West Coast, one of my friends introduced me to the chair of Industrial and Systems Engineering at San Jose State. And he said, hey, and so I taught there as an adjunct again. Right. And then I was introduced to some faculty at Santa Clara University School of Business. So, and I've always taught in engineering and business. So I've taught graduate classes in engineering and graduate classes in business, also some undergrads, but fundamentally graduate.
All right, that's pretty cool. I guess the next question will be like, why did you choose to go into information and analytics and like supply chains and all that stuff versus going into like finance or a BC or insert other areas?
Right. Well, I mean, some of it was, so remember I said that I had an undergraduate in chemical engineering?
Yes.
Right? So why did I move from ChemEng into, so in India, I had tried to get into two institutions, IIMs and in NITI. Have you heard of NITI?
No, I have not.
In Mumbai, in Powai. So NITI is National Institute for Training in Industrial Engineering. And then, of course, Indian Institute of Management, everybody knows. So I was not successful in getting into IIMs, but I did get into NITI. So, and in the meanwhile, I had also applied to the States, University of Texas at Arlington, and that's it. And I got in, and I got into industrial and systems engineering, and which was quite parallel to what I had just gotten into in India in NITI. So I decided to go in that direction. Why did I not go into finance? I suspect I don't have the skills. I mean, that's all I can say. And ultimately, I was very interested in technology and the use of technology in improving the state of corporations and organizations. And coincidentally, I moved into healthcare, and healthcare has so many roadblocks, so many difficulties in their process redesign and their use of technology. It is so fragmented, healthcare is. And that's what we are trying to fix. So there's a book that I'm writing, and I've done some work also. And we are trying to help, hopefully our book can be used throughout the nation for some of the work that.
Cool. So talking about your book, have you finished your book? And if you have, where can people find it?
Have not finished it. We are probably, there's a partner of mine who is a vice president and CIO of a large health system in Iowa. So he and I are writing it. And actually we are I would say about 3/4 of it done. We hope to have it complete by the end of this calendar year.
Cool.
And then.
So maybe after your book gets released, we'll have you back on the show to promote your book.
Okay, Niranjan.
So I guess the next question will be for that, like, since you are an engineer, how can people who are not in the engineering field go into the information and supply chain management sector?
Well, I mean, information systems is quite different from supply chain management.
Oh, my apologies.
No problems at all. So really, supply chain management, those of us who are industrial and systems engineers understand supply chain management quite well. And we also understand analytics quite well.
Okay.
If those of us who graduated many years ago, when there were mainframe computers, shared computing, using cards, to do our programs, At the time, we were not as focused in information systems.
Mhm.
We use programming, but information systems is much broader a discipline than programming.
Okay.
And at the time, but nowadays, you don't have to be an engineer to get into information systems and analytics.
Mhm.
You can be a computer scientist, you can be an information systems person. But if you want to get into supply chain, then you need to get into industrial engineering or systems engineering or business, like some of the courses offered in the School of Business in Levy School of Business.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you kind of led into my next counterpoint question of how people who like how people who do not sorry, words are kind of jammed up in my head. My question is, for those of us who may not be like as engineering or math science oriented, like I don't know, an art student or a history major, what advice would you give them, since the transition will be a little bit harder to go from than, let's just say, a mechanical engineer or a chemical engineer such as yourself? Like, how would you advise them to go into what you're doing?
Well, not information systems is a very broad discipline, very
Right.
broad. So you don't always have to get into some of the nuts and the bolts of information technology and information systems. There are very broad areas, like the class you'll be taking from me
Hmm.
is software platforms or enterprise platforms or whatever.
Right.
And those concepts can be dealt with at the broad level,
Hmm.
which are understood by a lot of disciplines, and they can be dealt with at excruciating complex and detailed levels that are generally understood by engineers and computer scientists. So it truly is not, information systems doesn't necessarily mean understanding bits and bytes and complexities of programming alone.
Okay.
It also means understanding how information systems should be designed, architected, and implemented, which is a big part. In fact, if I was to take information systems as a discipline, I would say almost 2/3 to 3/4 of information systems does not require programming. So anybody with arts, history, other majors can come up and take some classes and do well for themselves.
Okay, that's interesting. Um, so I guess you've been in the like various business industries and obviously healthcare for a very long time. I think I said that mildly. Um, but how do you think business will change in the future with like post COVID and God forbid a war and all that stuff?
Right. Well, it's obvious. We can see the transformation.
Right.
We can see the transformation in business. It was already there. E-commerce was, I mean, the rich have gotten richer.
Right.
So Amazon gets richer,
Mhm.
all these other companies like Walmart.com, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. And then Amazon gets richer two ways, not just e-commerce, but cloud computing, right? Uh,
Right.
so, so absolutely, I think that you're right in terms of how businesses will change,
Hmm.
but really that change is happening. Now, there is one other change that's also been happening. So there's e-commerce that is going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. There's
Right.
no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And along with that, logistics management. So logistics management will become very supply chain.
Professor Kapur, I do apologize, but there was a lag in when what you were saying on
Oh,
my end.
okay,
My apologies.
okay. No problems at all. So can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So e-commerce, of course, is going to expand. It already is expanding.
Right.
Did you know that in healthcare, telehealth visits, are you familiar with telehealth? When-
Not to the degree you are, but yes.
Right, right. I mean, basically, you call your doctor, and the doc doesn't, you don't have to go to the doc's office. He or
Right.
she can basically treat you, recommend, diagnose you, and treat you with medicines or whatever,
Mhm.
ointments or whatever, over a platform like this. So essentially, that's telehealth, and telehealth has been struggling for the last 25 years. This is not new. We've been doing it, but nobody accepts it. Now, with COVID, people are forced, and this acceleration of use of e-commerce, telemedicine, telehealth, all this has accelerated.
Right.
So businesses are going to have to now more aggressively go in that direction,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to saying, well, I can have a brick and mortar presence as well as an e-commerce presence. They have to start with e-commerce as their principal presence,
Okay.
and brick and mortar as their backup presence. That's number one. Number two, people also need to start looking at some of the principles that you will learn in software platforms. People will see how you can transition from e-commerce to platforms
Mm-hmm.
and really grow. And for example, Netflix, why did they beat Blockbuster? They beat Blockbuster not because they were much this thing. All they did in the beginning, you know what they did? They still had tapes, those tapes and DVDs and
VHS
stuff.
tape.
But they started to go with email and with e-communications, and slowly from there moved to streaming media, and Blockbuster could never catch up. So that's the power of e-commerce and software platforms, and that's where business is headed. And you know what happens, Niranjan,
But
is when you move in that direction,
mm-hmm.
what happens with technology, it is so fast
Mm-hmm.
and so smart that if you're not careful, the cycle time. So in the traditional old days, uh, if you came up with an idea, you had maybe a year to make the idea reality, and then nobody could catch up with you and stuff like that. Nowadays, you have 3 to 4 months to make it happen,
Mm-hmm.
and then be careful because somebody might come in and encroach on your space. And so business is going to be a little bit more smarter. You have to apply that, but it's also going to be far more rewarding, I think. Far more rewarding. For example, the kind of influence that Apple has. Apple is a $2 trillion company.
Yeah.
Facebook, $850 billion, right? Think,
Mm-hmm.
these are all platform companies. These are e-commerce and platform companies. And nobody could have become this big so fast.
Right.
So that's the whole power, because e-commerce and platforms, Alibaba, this Chinese company, right?
Yeah.
Tencent, all these companies have such global reaches that they get bigger faster.
Yeah, and I think for me at least, like Alibaba just kind of like came out of nowhere and started swinging with the heavyweights, kind of a thing. At least in my opinion.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we can talk about that in our class, and we will
Right.
tell you what happened. But the point is that these kind of companies and these kind of uh, what we call network effects would never have occurred, never, had there not been the internet, that was the fundamental foundation of the platform that we are using. And so really the internet, e-commerce platforms, that's where you're going to have to head. Now, you may not use, as a business, you may choose not to make those your core, but they would have to be these three technologies, internet, e-commerce, and platforms, have to play a big role in any business anybody does.
Cool. Um, First of all, I want to say I'm very excited to be in your class this coming quarter, and because of this discussion now, I'm actually like really hamped up and really like super excited now. So I was just like, I can't wait to be in your class now. So I guess the final question is, for someone who's watching here on YouTube and or listening on Spotify or one of the other or wherever you get your podcast, um, what advice could you give to someone who's like me, who just literally started the MBA program not too long ago, or thinking about going into business as like an undergrad, or like how you did, thinking about starting a company?
Oh, thinking of starting a company. Well, I mean, a company starting. So the one thing you have to understand about starting your own company, it's of course about passion.
Right.
If you have passion, and if you are willing to take risks,
Mm-hmm.
and then comes ownership. Ownership leads to dedication. So when you do your own business, you have to have these traits, and you develop them. It's not that difficult, but be ready to fail. Meaning, failure is not the end of the world, and that's what we have to learn in a business. If you're going to start a business, is be ready for both sides, the upside of business and the downside of business, right?
Right.
uh, that's what I always recommend, and that's what I've always seen is those people. But let me tell you, once I started my own business, it took about a year and a half to take off.
Okay.
But I was patient, and I kept on plugging away at it. And
Mhm.
I can tell you, I could never go back to working for a company. It's so tough after that. And of course, teaching is different. I
Right.
enjoy it, and I do teaching for my students,
Mhm.
and I teach so that students like yourself can get motivated and interested in some of these technologies, because I believe that regardless of what discipline, history, English major, whatever major you have, engineering major, whatever, information systems and understanding information systems has now become a key core component of your future. And it'll help you in your job, and it can help you in starting a business. I always advise people, unless you really have got some good ideas in your academics, start a job, get a few years of experience, see what it is that you like and don't like, and then if you want to, start a business.
Funny enough, that's what I'm doing right now. All right. I guess we'll end the podcast here. So, as always, thank you, Professor Kapur, for being on the show with us. For those of you who are watching, you can find us on any platform down below at anchors.com. Don't forget to check out Spar Soap. Again, everything in the description box down below. And as always, have a good one. See you in the next video. Peace.